welcome to the Enterprise Blockchain Review powered by Fifth9.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to the first Fifth9 podcast of 2019. My name is Phillip Harrison, and today's podcast is titled Digital, Blockchain, and IoT, the New Automation Boundary. In today's podcast, I'll be interviewing Yakeen Prabdial, the Managing Director of Fifth9, and Ashish Mehta, the Blockchain IoT Director of IncMantra.
So, hi, I'm Ashish Mehta. I currently serve as blockchain and IoT director at IncMantra. So, we are a boutique technology consulting firm. In addition to that, I also chair the blockchain working group at the Cloud Security Alliance, which is a non-profit devoted to multiple aspects of cloud security.
Hi, Phil. Great to be on this podcast for our first of 2019. My name is Yakeen Prabdial, CEO of Fifth9, serial innovator, and super keen to have Ashish on the show to learn all about the integration of blockchain and IoT and what it holds for us in the coming years.
Super, welcome everyone, and let's crack on. So to start with, let's start with some background information, and then we'll go to some key events of this year and last year. Ashish, let's start off with the CSA. So just for our audience benefit, can you explain to them what the CSA is, what its goals are, how it operates, and what the purpose of it is?
Sure. So the CSA is a non-profit. It's headquartered in the US, and it's a cross-platform, entirely member-driven initiative where we try to educate consumers of our research, whether it is in the form of research papers, whether it's in the form of guidance papers, whether it's in the form of webinars, on various key aspects of cloud security. So we have multiple research working groups which are currently active at the moment, which cover every single aspect that goes into your cloud security framework. We cover everything you can think of, like from IoT to blockchain to software defined perimeter to quantum safe computing to others. So there are, in this fashion, there are 25 different working groups which have their own independent agendas. I would say, yeah, agendas, and to publish actionable research as well as to produce guidance documents to benefit the community. So and the majority of the community, the people who are working on these documents, are developers or programmers who have I would say anywhere between 5 to 20 years, 25 years of active experience in the technology that they're working on.
Great. Super. Okay. We expect there to be 70 billion IoT devices by 2025, and we can assume that a growing percentage of these will transact directly peer-to-peer. So this is a very real case of blockchain and IoT working hand in hand. So let's ask the question, do you see blockchain playing a key role regards to these IoT devices, and how will this impact improve the business model? So within 2018, there are quite a few key IoT developments. Yakeen, let's start with yourself. What would you say are the key IoT developments in 2018?
So, Phil, I think that one of the biggest transitions in 2018 was that of scale. So we see a large amount of IoT devices prior to that, but they were service specific. And by definition, they were only accessible to applications which required them to be produced at the price points that deemed those services possible. So we now see, in 2017, millions of devices that claim to be IoT capable. In 2018, we started to see narrowband IoT and the rest of the 5G ecosystem kick in. That gives us a huge, unprecedented scale of hundreds of millions of devices. And particularly in consumer electronics and in cheap edge compute, where the price points are even down to $3 an edge, which is coming close to Bluetooth pricing. So definitely the big trend in IoT has been that of scale. The technologies like narrowband IoT have given us those cost points that allows us to break the barriers to go from nascent into mainstream. But with that moves the commodity of being a connectivity play into an application play. And that's where I think a lot of IoT service providers are scrambling to get up into that value-added service space. beyond that, we also see that 5G has a really strong play in automotive, and vehicular technology will be driving the 5G play, because we'll see that smart cities and smart uh, highways will effectively be the first instantiation of the real consumer value that we see coming from this new smart world that we claiming IoT will deliver us.
Super. No, thanks for that, Yakeen. That was insightful. Ashish, on the back of that, would you agree with that, or is there anything you'd see differently regards to the key development?
And the most interesting thing that I have seen in the IoT space is like there's increasing awareness about on the consumer side about what kind of data that you're sharing through your IoT device with with multiple third parties, and there's more awareness spreading over this issue, and people are getting more and more privacy conscious. So this is something which I have a strong feeling that GDPR, which was implemented in June of 2018.
I think Ashish, you spot on. We did a large amount of work in GDPR. We'd like to say that we helped slay the GDPR beast in several enterprise companies. And the one thing that we've learned is that privacy is becoming more and more inherent as people understand the value of their data. People are now understanding that sharing their wearable and health tracker data will have some severe repercussions, and them being able to control that sharing and managing those permissions is of the utmost importance. So security as well as implicit monetization as you move through the ecosystem will become two very focal points in IoT. And that's where I think we see a lot of the values of blockchain starting to kick off. One of the biggest game changers we've seen with IoT is that narrowband IoT, Cat-M1, and all these other low power wide area technologies will produce the scale that we've not seen before. And this unprecedented amount of cheap, untrusted IoT devices, which will now create all these new business vantage points when you mash this data together, will also add an implicit security challenge. So, where I see it is at the edge. We now have a transition from a relatively small number of devices, which are now well trusted, to a larger pool of generic devices. But furthermore, at the cloud level, we see this new digital modeling happening that bring the digital twins of the real and the virtual models. It becomes more and more important when we start to mash them together to create new business models, but more and more trust in combining the data points into information like GDPR and security and privacy and all of the opting in and opting out as we move through the life cycle of the devices. So together, the high-scale edge and the entrusted digital cloud adds more risk to the end-to-end IoT services. So that's where I think blockchain, adding that into the mix, is a very strong business instrument that will alleviate the additional risk and make these devices trustable, as well as you suggested, it'll add integrity to modeling these twins.
All right. The key factor there is how are you going to audit all those devices which are on the network and make sure that they are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing. So they have not been hijacked by a third party and who's made some kind of an IoT botnet, and and he's using the resources on that on those IoT devices for their personal whatever personal or business needs. So that is going to be one of the key factors there. So I have a strong feeling that this is one area where your blockchain will change business model, because the moment you add another layer of security on top of that, automatically you do two things. First is you ensure that you you ensure that the attacker has to work harder to get into the network, and the second thing is that you also end up you also end up giving assurance to the consumer that like my resources are not getting wasted, because even now in a lot of enterprise deployments I'm personally also seeing this, that a lot of end users are not 100% sure about the ROI of building out a large scale IoT infrastructure. They're like, oh, you're doing it, okay, well and good, but where is the ROI in this? So if we're able to you give them a clear cut ROI with a proper picture that, okay, in 3 years or 5 years your investment will be returned back to you, then they feel more assured making that investment.
Ashish, I'd like to add to that because that is a super important
Sure.
point. That ROI point is quite an important one. Because I think with nascent technology, people expect to sow the seeds of wisdom and innovation and let it fester, and then one day they'll be able to see a business case, which is why the exciting mashups of IoT are only just about to start. What I think is blockchain will bring this new shared value model to the table. Because if you use a wallet to provide some sort of authentication or blockchain based permission, then what you can do is you can have IoT edge points that can opt in and out of the models. So participation monetization starts to become a key tangible outcome of this technology merge. And then when you add in the building, the other instruments such as machine learning, AI, we start to see that the return of investment that solves not just a problem of efficiencies, but a problem of creating new business models that previously didn't exist. And that effectively is quite exciting. So too can the business models start to become agile business models. But the one thing I wanted to ask, Ashish, is with IoT and blockchain, there's a natural antagonism with regards to proof of work or proof of stake in the consensus algorithms. What's your thoughts on how would IoT devices being lightweight, potentially even battery powered, how would they get around that?
Um, See, as of now, both, I mean, I would say proof of stake has a definite lead over proof of work for IoT deployments. But the thing is, both your Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ethereum as well as Hyperledger Sawtooth, all three are coming up with newer flavors. I wouldn't call them flavors, but the upgrades. So we're hoping that once those new upgrades come out sometime in the first quarter of this year, we will see a much faster rollout of IoT on the on the blockchain. As of now, it's a restriction. I agree that there's a sort of tug of war, as you rightly put it, between what kind of deployments can be done and at what scale you can do them and at what speed you can do them. But this is our expectation with these independent foundations, the way they're working. All of them, whether it's the Bitcoin Foundation, whether it's the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, whether it's the Hyperledger Foundation, or whether it's the IOTA Foundation, all of them are coming out very um, concrete upgrades, which should end up solving a lot of these key issues that which are bothering
Yeah,
folks at the moment, and I'm
I
expecting that to
agree. Because
happen.
you say with
Yeah.
DAG and with Hashgraph, there's these blockchain-esque type technologies that potentially offer a low power solutions that still give us the immutability that traditional blockchains give us. Do you see that that's going to be one of those things that will drive IoT blockchain?
Yeah, Hashgraph is a little bit further away. So maybe in another 2 years or so, we might see practical deployments on that. But DAGs, absolutely, yes. DAGs are seeing a lot of traction at the moment. So you can definitely expect more traction on the DAG space. In the next couple of years. Like just last year, the IOTA, they have partnered with some with a biometric authentication company called IMPass for a smart cities initiative, which is supported by the European Union in Northern Europe. It's in Norway, Ireland, and Spain. So the initiative is called City Exchange. So, we are definitely we're seeing a lot of traction on that aspect. And the thing is, see, ultimately, it's more like a chicken and egg kind of situation. If you don't have developers who are developing on those platforms, you're not going to see any development happening, right? I mean, you can't. I mean, your technology can be the absolute best in the world, but if there are no developers or programmers available, in the market who can code on your systems and who can, release stuff on your release products which are useful to the business community, then that technology, no matter how good it is, it will not fly. I hope
No,
I'm making sense
absolutely,
with
absolutely. I
what I'm
think
trying to
that's the
say
key.
here. Yeah, so the developer community is extremely key. So what I have noticed in the IoT space is that IOTA is developing a very good community of third party developers who are, and they're developing some very interesting use cases, in this IoT space, whether it's smart city or smart grid or your mobility, and that kind of stuff is, I'm seeing some very interesting deployments there. So, and the thing is, the other advantage is with IOTA specifically is they're constantly pushing upgrades. Like, and then not only are they funding some of the most interesting startups that they see, but they also are constantly pushing upgrades and improvements to the network. So that is happening with the IoT. Similarly with Sawtooth, only issue that I personally feel with Sawtooth is that Sawtooth doesn't have as many developers ready to deploy on that platform at the moment as as IOTA or even Hyperledger Fabric. Like recently, we launched a blockchain frame. It has an IoT component. So we had to make a decision. Do we go with Hyperledger Fabric or do we go with Hyperledger Sawtooth? So because it was much easier to get developers who are confident and who have deployed previously on Fabric, so we chose Hyperledger Fabric, and that added a little complexity to our solution because Fabric is not a natural fit for IoT deployments like Sawtooth. But the thing is, because we were very keen to get the solution out to market quickly, and at the same time we were very keen to ensure that you were working with something which is already proven. So that's why we chose that solution.
So just moving then, we mentioned regards to innovation and such like. So, um, Ashish, what's your view on the types of blockchain IoT innovation, especially what you see coming through from the CSA, or from the different developers who engage from the CSA? I mean, thinking specifically around, for example, the drone issue we had at the UK airports most
Correct.
recently. Is there
Correct.
anything real world life example that you're seeing innovation through the CSA?
Yeah, we're tracking a couple of players who are, they're putting some kind of chips which are, on the blockchain, chips encoded into your drone, and those chips are on the blockchain. So but right now it's still in testing and pilot phase. They're not 100% confident about when they'll be able to mass produce those drones, but those kind of drones will be very useful to track in these kind of situations, because if each of those drones comes with a blockchain enabled chip, and that chip, the control of that, because it's a consensus driven control, one control could be with the end user, but the other control could be with the regulator, like in the in the UK you have the FAA, right, the Federal Aviation Authority. No, that's in the US,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. So one control could be with them. So if suppose they feel like, okay, this is interfering with our airfield area, then they could potentially shut it down and bring it down safely away from the airfield, like in the Gatwick Airport case.
What's your view on the speed of this? I mean, do you think Uber are actually going to be right?
So I think that the whole positioning with Uber and their
That's right.
blockchain car initiative is something that we're going to see the monetization value of blockchain providing some immense value in the way that they want to manage their cars. Um, I would separate autonomous cars from blockchain-based IoT monetization, simply because autonomous cars has such a bigger ecosystem that only in certain controlled elements like the we see that autonomous cars starts to have these pod-like capabilities that offer immediate in-city transportation logistics value, right? Mainstream autonomous cars are still, many years away, ignoring the fact that that level 5 autonomous car technology and vehicular capabilities are still not there yet, no matter what Tesla said. So as we see that, people like Uber are claiming that these things are happening in areas where Dubai has a smart city. They have the infrastructure to be able to put smart highways, smart roads, wideband very quickly. It's likely that we will see the first incubators of where 5G, autonomous cars, blockchain, and a large dose of AI starting to emerge in places like Dubai. So we talk about smart city and autonomous driving, and then we try to talk about monetization of blockchain. And I think we need to keep them separate because autonomous driving is still further away than we anticipate. Clearly, it has dependencies, notwithstanding AI, 5G, a connected citizen, mindset and culture. And we're going to start to see them embody themselves in certain pockets in our society, whether it's the Milton Keynes experiment or whether it's specific areas in Singapore and Dubai. But coming back to where we see blockchain and smart cars working together, I think we'll see that fairly quickly, that cars will start to, much like the digital asset broker, start to procure services through the blockchain themselves, because that's a real clear value statement. As the cars become smarter and autonomous driving becomes more safer and people start to trust the technology, it will move out of the closed city confines of like Milton Keynes and move into the mainstream roads. And that's when we can see that those integrations start to provide the big value.
Can I add something there?
Yeah, please do. Yeah,
Yeah,
please. Sorry, I was
I
just
mean,
getting them
yeah,
off
yeah,
mute.
yeah. So the thing is, what I've also noticed is, you're seeing a lot of resistance with these autonomous cars. I've seen it recently in the US also with Waymo's cars. That their tires were slashed, and because people are still not confident about the whole aspect of letting a car ride on its own. And there is a lot of resistance even today to that aspect. So my personal feeling is, before you see mainstream adoption of completely autonomous cars, you will see mainstream adoption of completely autonomous fleet trucks, which you where you could put them entirely on highways, or even mainstream adoption of tractors or tractor trailers, that kind of stuff, something which can which does not which is not involved in a crowded area, or where there's a chance of a pedestrian crossing the street and stuff like that. So that's the area where I feel personally you will find first adoption of autonomous vehicles, and only once that is, and people are more confident with that, that okay, there isn't a lot of happening, a lot of incidents of sorts, people getting hit by cars and all that happening, then trucks and all that, then you will slowly see people get more encouraged to use your this thing, fully autonomous vehicles. I mean, if you notice today, people are quite confident with your what do you call that? Uh, what's the word I'm looking for there? You put the car on cruise control. Yeah, cruise control. Cruise control is a technology which came out, if I'm not mistaken, in '96, but it still took them most companies like 8 to 9 years to bring it to mainstream adoption, and now practically every car has cruise control. So so something along those lines you're going to see here also, because automobiles as a sector is extremely regulated, so that is why it is going to take time to see that happen. It won't happen immediately.
So putting you both on the spot here slightly, moving slightly away from the autonomous car aspect, but keeping with Smart Dubai Smart City and the integration of IoT and blockchain, do you think we'll have a smart city which has a widely used IoT and blockchain capability within the 2 years?
If you're sure that it's an entirely smart city where you're in control of everything, then yes. I mean, you won't have a sort of like a bicyclist sudden bicycle driver, or a pedestrian suddenly crossing the road randomly, in weird directions, or you don't have somebody getting drunk or something and walking on the road in the wrong direction, stuff like that. Then yeah, I mean, if you're confident about that, but otherwise, it's very tough. As of today, it's
So
very
basically,
tough.
make sure it's not a university town.
Yeah, yeah. University towns will be a big no-no.
Yakeen, would you agree? Would you think a yes with those parameters in 2 years of having IoT and blockchain integrated in a smart city?
I think for smart city, definitely it's going to be a controlled environment. But I actually see another angle to smart city and blockchain, which is, if you can indulge me for a second, today's smart cities are built on the pillars of individual foundational giants. You hear the big news of IBM and Accenture and others launching smart city initiatives. The reality is that a smart city actually is a heterogeneous environment. So you're going to end up with a large amount of sensors and services that are IoT or IoT-esque that want to interact with the smart city, either by giving them data, selling them data, asking for data, to effectively give the citizens of the city and the governance of the city a more efficient way of using the shared resources. Because smart city is all about a shared resource problem. So I think that blockchain will actually add a lot of value in smart cities where you have multiple heterogeneous players who are offering different siloed services, from a lighting solution for smart lighting on the city streets to congestion control, traffic management, smarter buildings, all the way through to your traditional smart cities of waste management and people movement. So, with those silo solutions being built by the big stalwarts of smart city industry, today they don't talk to each other. There is no common means, and everyone believes that the answer is stick an API in there. And as soon as you have 5 players, and remember, smart city will have 30, 40 players when it becomes mature. Just 5 players asks you to do 25 integration points on ever-changing API sets. And that's where I think blockchain can provide an API-less way of data provision, data authentication, and the creation of new business models. So my prediction for 2019 is you're going to find some non-API based cross-industry smart city applications popping out, where those services are actually applied to in some sort of blockchain type marketplace.
Super. Okay, final question for everyone. I'm going to go around the table on this one. So let's look forward to 2019 and about the predictions. What I'd like from you is your number one, your top IoT and blockchain combined integrated prediction for 2019. Let's start with Ashish, with yourself. What's your prediction for 2019? Your top one.
um, you're going to see more deployments happening, and on which are deploying existing IoT infrastructure on blockchain systems, at least pilot cases, and that is going to happen over next 3 to 6 months, and depending on how they perform, those deployments perform, you will see at least some cases going out into production, if not all. And people are going to look at more controlled environments initially, like Yakeen mentioned, smart city control environment, where they would look to deploy these kind of solutions initially. That would be one, and the second will be that increased focus on privacy concerns. GDPR will definitely be one key concern, but there will be other concerns also. Like for medical devices, you'll have HIPAA. Yeah. And so that will also be a very key concern there. So these, if you're able to address these couple of concerns at the initial stage itself, before your device is even deployed, that will be a very good, yes or tick mark for your
So I
solution.
think if we're going to talk about something that's going to happen very quickly, my initial prediction is that we're going to see some closed user group or private DLT solutions that will emerge, that will comprise of permissioned blockchains being used inside closed user groups or silos of IoT services, predominantly for either securing the edge device and using blockchain as a cheaper, more scalable way to create immutability at the edge. And then further to that, extending that use case for using that digital identity to actually gain access and manage that device's life cycle of access. So that's what I see in 2019. I also see further long tail in 2019 that people will start to realize the threats of quantum compute, and that we'll see more and more quantum proof or quantum tolerant technologies in blockchain starting to emerge. And I think that IoT will be an early incubator for those technologies simply because of its scale and its proliferation around the globe. So the geographic reach and the mass of IoT will effectively make that problem statement very real.
Right, great. Well, we'll have to wait and see to see which of those come true. But that concludes this year's very first podcast. So I'd like to say thank you very much to my guests. It was Yakeen Prabdial and Ashish Mehta, and I'm Phillip Harrison. And I hope to see you all and hope you listen to the next podcast. Thank you very much.